Stop scrolling. Yes, you. This is Jikook Lover, and what you're about to hear might completely change the way you see luxury, power, and visual dominance in the global fashion world. Before we go any further, hit that like button right now, drop your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to Jikook Lover because today's story is not just news, it's a cultural earthquake. What happens when one of the most iconic luxury houses in history aligns with a man whose presence alone can crash the internet? What happens when elegance meets magnetic charisma? Jimin appeared with Cartier, and the world hasn't been the same since. His visuals? Untouchable, unmatched, unbelievable. But here's the real question. Was this just a brand collaboration, or the beginning of something much bigger? Let's dive in. Jimin appears in luxury with Cartier. His visuals have no rival. There are moments in pop culture that feel like events. And then there are moments that feel like shifts, silent, powerful movements that alter the atmosphere before anyone fully understands what just happened. The moment Jimin appeared alongside Cartier was not loud at first. It wasn't explosive in the way scandals are explosive. It didn't need to be. It was quiet, controlled, almost mysterious. And that's exactly why it shook the world. Before anyone even processed the announcement, before headlines solidified into official statements, before fashion editors finalized their commentary, images began circulating. Stark, elegant, cinematic. Jimin framed in shadow and light, wearing Cartier not as an accessory, but as an extension of his aura. People didn't just react. They paused. There was something different about this appearance. Something that didn't feel like a typical ambassador reveal. It wasn't simply a celebrity wearing jewelry. It was a narrative unfolding in stillness. A story told through glances, posture, breath, and silence. Within minutes, social media platforms ignited. Hashtags trended globally. Fan accounts dissected every detail. The cut of his jacket, the angle of his wrist, the way the light reflected off the metal against his skin. Fashion insiders, who are rarely quick to surrender to pop phenomena, began using words like transformative, elevated, and redefining. But what exactly made this moment so powerful? Was it the legacy of Cartier, a house synonymous with royalty, timelessness, and prestige? Or was it Jimin himself, a performer whose stage presence has long transcended borders, languages, and expectations? Perhaps it was neither alone. Perhaps it was the collision. Cartier has always represented more than jewelry. It represents history, power, precision, a kind of silent authority that does not beg for attention because it already owns it. And then there's Jimin, an artist known for emotional intensity, fluid duality, and the rare ability to command a room without raising his voice. When the first official visual dropped, the internet didn't scream immediately. It stared. The photograph wasn't overly dramatic. It didn't rely on excessive styling or exaggerated theatrics. Instead, it leaned into restraint, minimalism, intention. Jimin's gaze in the image wasn't playful. It wasn't overtly seductive. It was focused, calm, almost knowing, as if he understood the magnitude of what this meant before anyone else did. Fashion critics began writing think pieces analyzing the symbolism. Some suggested that Cartier choosing Jimin represented a shift in luxury branding toward emotional storytelling rather than status display. Others argued that Jimin brought humanity to high jewelry, that he softened the traditional image of untouchable opulence and replaced it with something intimate, accessible, yet still impossibly refined. Sales reportedly surged. Online searches for the exact pieces he wore skyrocketed within hours. Boutique locations saw increased inquiries. It wasn't just fandom hype, it was measurable impact. But numbers alone don't explain the atmosphere. The campaign video, subtle, dimly lit, almost cinematic in tone, elevated the conversation further. Jimin walked through a shadowed corridor, light catching on the edges of Cartier's craftsmanship. Each movement deliberate, each pause intentional. There were no exaggerated gestures, no flashy theatrics. Just presence. And presence, when authentic, can be louder than any performance. Fans began speculating immediately. Was this purely fashion? Or was there artistic messaging embedded within the visual narrative? The interplay of light and darkness mirrored themes Jimin has explored throughout his artistic career: vulnerability and strength, fragility and control, softness and power. Was that intentional? Or were fans simply reading poetry into luxury? Even industry insiders admitted something unusual had occurred. One anonymous stylist commented that Jimin didn't look like he was endorsing Cartier, he looked like he belonged in its legacy. As if he wasn't stepping into the brand's world, but expanding it. And that's where the conversation turned global. Because when a K-pop artist doesn't just participate in luxury fashion but redefines its aesthetic tone, it signals something bigger than a partnership. It signals evolution. Luxury houses have historically aligned with actors, models, and royalty. Yet here was Jimin, a performer whose foundation is music and movement, standing not as a guest in high fashion, but as a pillar. Some critics questioned whether this level of influence was temporary hype. Others argued that the cultural power of artists like Jimin represents a permanent shift in global luxury dynamics. But the fans, the army, saw something else entirely. They saw validation. They saw recognition. They saw a world that once underestimated Asian artists, now placing one at the center of its most prestigious visual narratives. And that emotional undercurrent cannot be ignored. Because this wasn't just about aesthetics. It was about symbolism. Jimin didn't overpower Cartier's image. He didn't distort its identity. He harmonized with it. The restraint in his expression, the elegance in his posture, the quiet confidence radiating through every frame. It created an almost cinematic tension, as if something monumental was being communicated without a single spoken word. Even people outside the fandom admitted it was difficult to look away. So now the question lingers. Was this collaboration carefully calculated from a marketing standpoint? Absolutely. But was it also something more organic? A meeting of energies that simply made sense? Possibly. Because sometimes cultural shifts don't announce themselves loudly. They slip into the timeline quietly, and then suddenly, the entire conversation has changed. Fashion is no longer just about clothing or jewelry. It's about identity, narrative, representation. And Jimin standing beside Cartier felt like a statement that extended beyond product placement. It felt like a declaration that presence matters, that artistry transcends industry boundaries, that elegance can be both delicate and dominant at the same time. And perhaps that's why the reaction was so visceral. People weren't just impressed, they were moved. So here we are now, weeks later, and the images still circulate. The video still racks up views. Discussions still unfold across platforms in dozens of languages. And one question continues to echo through the fandom and beyond. Was this simply a luxury campaign? Or was it the moment Jimin quietly claimed his place not just in music history, but in the permanent visual legacy of global fashion? And now, as the flashes fade and the headlines settle into history, one truth remains impossible to ignore. This was never just about diamonds, gold, or prestige. It was about impact. It was about the way a single presence can recalibrate the temperature of an entire industry. Jimin didn't shout. He didn't overperform. He simply existed within Cartier's universe and somehow made it feel different, deeper, almost reborn. So as the world continues to debate and dissect every frame, we're left with one final burning question. Is this collaboration a peak moment or the dawn of Jimin's untouchable luxury era?